Hello everyone, Kristina here. Welcome to another walkthrough video for a new release in my line with Concord and Ninth. And this is for October 2025. So in September, I released the first half of my holiday products, and now we're going to receive the next half. So again, I've got lots of fun holiday products, but there are a few things in here that you could use year round. So I'll point those out as we start walking through all of the product. As I've done in previous videos, I'm going to show you the products and also some cards that I made using them. And because I like to mix and match and use everything together, you will most likely see, or you will see, some cards featured multiple times for different products. So let's get into it. The Simple Christmas bundle includes 3 products. It has the 4x6 stamp set, the coordinating dies, and then a stencil pack. Now, this was born out of a need to create some clean and simple cards. I love a really good clean and simple card, and I wanted to create some stamps that would give me some good sized elements to work with. So the 4x6 stamp set has 4 different greetings, a bunch of different images, and everything's really clean and simple. Over in the dies, the coordinating dies, every single image is cut out except for the 2 snowflakes, and that's because I have a whole suite of snowflake products in another bundle, and so I wanted to cut down on the amount of dies that are in the set just to keep the cost down a little bit. So most all of the images can be cut out using the dies. And then in the stencil pack, there's actually 6 stencils. You can see an example of them all on the back here. It's essentially 3 stencils that are big, bold, and clean, simple. So this one does the full Merry Christmas. We have a snowflake. You can see the snowflake there. And then there's a good sized Christmas tree. I've also included 3 patterns. We have a nice sort of plaid. We have a small intricate diamond pattern, and then some diagonal stripes. I did want to mention with this stencil in particular, because there's a lot of area where the stencil could like move around, I found it easiest to use this stripe stencil when I put a little bit of pixie spray on the back. Pixie spray is a very low tack adhesive that is meant for stencils. You can apply it to the back, and it just gives a tiny bit of grip to the back of the stencil so it holds onto your project. And you can use the stencil multiple times after applying the pixie spray. I would say I could probably get upwards of 4 uses until I need to spray it again with some more pixie spray. So let's look at some cards that I made using the Simple Christmas bundle. That's the stamps, the dies, and the stencils. First up, I have a really clean and simple red and gold card. I used the plaid stencil for the pattern in the background, and then I stamped all the little individual elements as well as the greeting, and heat embossed in gold, and then I die cut the tree. So you don't have to use the die with the stamp. You can use it on its own, and it's still plenty tree-like for the shape. This is a 1-layer card where I did the diagonal stencil at the bottom, stamped everything else up here, and then I used some colored pencils to color in the leaves and berries. Here's another very clean and simple card. I used that really large greeting stencil, and then I also stenciled over in the same colors using that diagonal or diamond pattern, using the diamond pattern. This card has that diagonal stencil in the background plus the snowflake stencil. I've also used the Merry Christmas stamp from the stamp set and the coordinating die. This card uses the plaid stencil for a background. This card has the large Merry Christmas white heat embossed from the stamp set. The greeting from the stamp set fits perfectly inside one of the ornaments from the Ornament stencil pack. And then this one might not be as obvious, but I used the stencil and penciled on the tree shape and then used scissors to cut it out. So I did use the tree stencil from the Simple Christmas stencil pack, but just used it in a different way. So this is the Simple Christmas bundle. Once again, it's the stamps, dies, and stencil pack. I can never resist creating cards with snowflakes every holiday season, and this year is no different. This time I have a little bit of a different take on a snowflake stamp set. I have the Snowflake Season Bundle. So the Snowflake Season Bundle includes the Snowflake Season Easy Repeat background stamp, as well as the Snowflake Season border dies. So first, the stamp set. This grouping of snowflakes can be repeated, go boop, right up here. You can kind of see how this comes down right here. You catch that same little curve right there. And then this kind of area jetting out nestles into this area right here. So you can repeat this large grouping of snowflakes in all directions to create a seamless pattern. I've also got some smaller gradings down here at the bottom just to stretch the use of the stamp set itself. Those same snowflakes are featured on the Snowflake Season border dies. So I have one really big border right here, a really large die, which you can also repeat over and over to create a background. And I'll point that out on the card where I did that. But then you also have these 6 individual snowflakes over here that can be used independently. So let's look at some cards that I made using the Snowflake Season bundle. First up is this 5x7 card. So I have the large grouping of snowflakes kind of hanging off the bottom edge of this 5x7 card. I kept the top really simple and just stamped that Happy Christmas and then white heat embossed it. This is an example of 3 of those independent snowflake dies. I just used a little bit of glitter paper. I'm not sure if the shine's showing up on camera, but just adding a little bit of shine with those snowflakes. This card uses the stamps as well as the dies. I stamped that background on this tree shape here, and then I cut out these snowflakes and stacked them for a more substantial grouping on the card. This 5x7 card features the large border die. If you can kind of see that things are kind of popped up, I actually used some glitter foam to cut those out. And here's one big border, and then it's repeated up here as well. And the snowflakes that were cut off that I didn't need anymore, I filled it in this gap right here. So you can really build a full background using that large border of snowflake die as well. So this is the Snowflake Season bundle. You have the 6x6 stamp set that has the large repeating snowflake images, and then the individual dies with the large border die. The Ornaments stencil pack is one of my large 6x9 stencil sets that gives you the opportunity to make a very colorful background. On the back of the packaging, you can see a few examples or a couple examples of how you could possibly use all of the different layers. But I wanted to point out something that's really interesting. So there are 4 layers of the ornaments themselves. Then you have the tops of the ornaments and the kind of string coming off the top. And then you have a snowflake stencil. So you can use the snowflake stencil on its own. And I do have a card example showing that. So let's look at some cards made using the Ornament stencil pack. Here's one right here where I made an A2 card. In fact, I could have gotten 2 A2 card fronts out of this, except for the fact that I wanted to have this ornament right here positioned on the card just right there, and then stamp a greeting from the Simple Christmas stamp set. So when I was putting on the snowflake layer, I just did not do the snowflake on that one ornament because I knew I wanted to put the greeting there, and then went ahead and did all the rest of the snowflakes. Here's an example of using just the snowflake stencil. So I actually stenciled that particular stencil 3 times in 3 different colors, and I just moved the stencil around in order to fill in those gaps in between. For this card, I wanted to highlight just one of the ornaments. So I actually cut a circle in some midnight cardstock. I did a little bit of that diagonal stencil from the Simple Christmas stencil pack for a pattern, and then I have my ornament right there in the center. One final example using the Ornament stencil pack. This one I wanted to do a bunch of gold heat embossing. So I put a very light layer of pink lemonade on the background, and then I stenciled on all of these ornaments. The last step was to just let everything dry completely so I could do my heat embossing, and I added the tops of the ornaments and the snowflakes with some gold embossing. So this is the Ornament stencil pack. There are 6 stencils, and it is a 6x9 design, so you can ink blend a half sheet of letter-sized cardstock and get 2 A2 card fronts out of it. This is the Inside Holiday Grading Stamp Set, And this actually came about from a request from one of my viewers at YouTube. They wanted some stamps to put on the inside of their holiday cards. So I came up with some different phrases and different greetings. And here we are. We have our 4x6 inside holiday greeting stamps. And I thought I would just show you some examples of the stamps used on A2 sized pieces of cardstock. So just imagine these are the inside of your cards. The idea behind this stamp set was that you'd have a larger greeting and then a slightly smaller, longer phrase. So I've got 3 large greetings: Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, and Merry Christmas, and then all of the smaller greetings. And I did also want to point out that there's something a little bit unique about this. We have a couple of greetings that are repeats, but the wording is changed. So if you are a single household or if you have a family. So right here it says, "I'm so lucky to have you in my life, wishing you a festive season wrapped in joy." And then down here it says, "We're so lucky to have you in our lives, wishing you a festive season wrapped in joy." So there's that example. And then there's also one over here where one says, "Season's greetings from my house to yours," and then "Season's greetings from our house to yours." So there's a couple different options. You know, sometimes you're sending a card to a friend and it's from you just personally, and other times you're sending cards to people and it's from you and other people in your household or home. So there's just a couple options there. So this is the inside holiday greeting stamps. It's 4x6, and there are 3 larger greetings and 13 smaller sub greetings in the stamp set. The Trees and Forest stencil pack is another 6x9 stencil set. Looks more like this. So I'm going to flip this over. You can see how it's meant to be used. If you're using all 4 stencils in the pack, you can do a half-size sheet of letter-sized cardstock, and you'll get that full scene. And then you can cut it in half and get 2 A2 card fronts. So as you can see, you get every single layer to create the entire scene. And then you can use these individually and isolate just one segment of the horizon with trees if you'd like. And I do have a card like that I'm going to show you. First up is this A2 card where I did do the full background and then split it into 2. So this is just an example of doing that whole background. Here's one on a landscape 5x7 card, and I decided to only use one of those horizon lines. So I did a nice big sky and then had kind of like the trees and everything silhouetted down below. And then here's an example of when you use only just one of those stencils. I just ink blended over from Clover over to Midnight, and it really isolates that one area and it lends itself to make a really clean and simple card. So this is the Trees and Forest stencil pack. There are 4 6x9 stencils in the pack, and they're really easy to use and a lot of fun for creating nice, clean, and simple cards. This is the Elegant Holiday Greeting Stamps and Coordinating Dies. There are 5 large scripty greetings for your holiday cards, and then you have the coordinating dies. So let's take a look at some cards made using this bundle. First up, here's that Merry Christmas greeting that was white heat embossed on rainforest cardstock and then cut out using the dies. Here's a card where I stamped the Peace on Earth greeting and just kept it really simple. I just stamped that in Clover. For this card where I wanted lots of gold heat embossing, I decided to heat emboss the Season's Greetings on white cardstock and then cut it out with the die. And then here's an example of the Merry Christmas stamped onto an ink blended background. Once again, the Elegant Holiday Greetings bundle includes the 4x6 stamp set and the coordinating dies. I have one small die set in the October 2025 release, and that is the Calm and Bright dies. Might be a little bit easier to see it like that. Looks like this when it's all put together. I just loved the fonts that I used in the Elegant Holiday Greetings stamp set so much that I wanted to create a die using that same font treatment. So this is what it looks like all together on a card. Just stacked that and put gold on top, and I used the white shadow in the background for this card. And then over here I have just one layer on white And it's nice and bright and stark on this poppy card. So this is just a little tiny die set, but you can actually do quite a lot with it, and I think it's really, really pretty. So this is the October 2025 release from Kristina Werner with Concord and Ninth. Everything is available for purchase over at concordandninth.com. And happy shopping. Thanks for tuning in today to see this quick walkthrough, and I will see you in another video very soon.